Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall. From social media to meaningful growth in beer, my guest is Alyssa Hoberer. She's the head brewer at Jagged Mountain Brewing in Denver. We're also going to talk about appropriate styles for brewery anniversaries, searching for positivity, and hard seltzer redemption. And we're going to get into it all in just a moment. But first, All About Beer is back online and producing original content for beer enthusiasts and professionals. Visit allaboutbeer.com to see the latest. And if you want to support us in that endeavor, we set up a Patreon for both readers and professional companies in the beer space. You can check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer to learn more. And for more audio content, search All About Beer on your podcast platform of choice, and you can listen to the shows that are now available, including Beer Travelers, Brewer to Brewer, and the All About Beer podcast. We're able to bring you this show each week thanks to the companies that want to support independent journalism in the beer space. You can learn more about our surprisingly affordable rates just by emailing info@allaboutbeer.com. Speaking of that, this episode is brought to you by New Holland Brewing. Did you know that the term dragon's milk has been around since the 17th century? It was used to describe potent ales and elixirs that were worthy of celebration, a reward at the end of a hero's journey. New Holland Brewing Company is proud to continue that tradition today with Dragon's Milk Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout, clocking in at a robust 11% ABV and featuring notes of roasted malt, chocolate, and vanilla. The legend of Dragon's Milk continues to grow, and we'll raise a glass to that. Learn more and find Dragon's Milk near you at dragonsmilk.com. We're also brought to you by Les Bons, a celebration of saison, mixed fermentation beer, ciders, natural wine, and oysters. Brewers from around the country will descend on Duluth, Georgia on November 5th, 2022 from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on the town green. All proceeds go to further the mission of Oyster South, supporting aquaculture in the Southeast. Tickets are just $85 and include unlimited beer samples, coffee, oysters, and a barbecue plate. Get yours today before it sells out. Go to lesbon.eventbrite.com. There are some posts that have a longer shelf life on the internet than others, bits of wisdom or doses of reality that resonate when you first read them and then continue to make sense long after, should they pop up again. Such is the case with a post that Alyssa Hoberer put up in late 2019, urging people not to open a brewery. That is, unless they've put in the work and knew the risks. A lot has happened in the last 2 years, obviously, but that post, and I'll read more about it while we're in the show, popped up on my Facebook feed last week, and it still rang true. Hoberer has also posted more bits of wisdom, as well as a look inside of the brew house at Jagged Mountain in Denver, where she's the head brewer. What's up ahead is a wide-ranging conversation that talks about beer's evolution, making strong seltzers, social media, and more. But we start with education and how the Great American Beer Festival can be more than just fun. It can also be an exchanging of ideas. Here's our conversation. I was thinking in advance of this call about how the beer world, the U.S. beer world at least, came back to Denver for the Great American Beer Festival a few weeks ago. And first time in person in a couple of years. And I know for Colorado breweries, it's always a chaotic week. Schedules don't matter. Everybody sort of, kisses their loved ones goodbye at home and says, I'll see you in 10 days. And it's a lot of fun. But there's also a lot that I think people learn on both sides. Brewers from around the country and enthusiasts from around the country come to Colorado, come to Denver because of its enlightened beer scene, because of its entrenched beer scene. And, I feel like a lot of people always leave the airport, or hit the road home feeling inspired by what they've experienced, not necessarily at the convention center, but in the breweries and the tap rooms that they visited. I'm wondering if it's a two-way street, though, if for everybody who's coming through in the conversations that you have, that after you get past the exhaustion of hosting a huge party, there's renewed energy.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of have mixed feelings about Great American Beer Festival, just because, like you said, it is really exhausting for all of the, brewery employees that work in Denver around that. the brewery that I work at Jagged Mountain, we're literally, I think, one of the closest breweries to the convention center. So we
Yeah.
definitely get hit, pretty hard with like a huge crowd of people, which can be a lot. I think for me, it's really stressful being pretty much the only brewer. I have one like very part-time assistant. So trying to prep for that is really exhausting. But the part that I love about it, that I leave that weekend feeling very like I've made a ton of new friends. I think, it's really interesting to meet new people from around the country and to hear about their beer scene and what they're making, what the trends are in that area. Kind of these people, like what it inspires them and, how they view craft beer, I think is really interesting. So that, there's never been a JBF that I've left without at least like a handful of new people that I'm like chatting with online or trying to plan a trip out to where they live and doing a collab and all this stuff. So I think that's the huge positive for me is, meeting new people and also just coming together as a beer industry in Denver and really, showing everybody what we got kind of thing.
So what was your takeaway from this year then, based on the conversations, based on the interactions?
I think a lot of people are still recovering or still actively going through, COVID and trying to find new ways of bringing in business and trying to find new ways of selling beer and figuring out, what people want to drink and what people want to do. I think the consensus is a lot of people are trying to push these like, special events in their tap rooms. Or if you're a bigger brewery, I feel like a lot of people are doing, packaging, which is luckily something that I'm not currently doing at Jagged just because we're really small. But I think there's a lot of struggle out there, but I think there's still positivity in terms of the fact that, people are actually coming into the tap room again and JBF is happening. And, these crowds of people are actually coming together and we're able to do that. So I think there's a little bit of like obvious struggle, but still have that little bit of like, maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're still trying to figure it out.
It strikes me the whole positivity thing, right? Because the last time GABF happened, or since the last time GABF happened, the beer industry has changed so much. There's been initiatives that have come out to talk about social justice. There have been real conversations and hopefully real actions on DEI. There's been a lot of really negative things brought to light that hopefully, have brought about bits of positivity. I'm not asking you to speak for the whole industry, but when you do have cross sections of folks coming through your tap room, for a big event like that, did you notice a change in the conversation and the tones? Did there seem to be, I don't know, more maturity than 2 years ago?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I've been going to JBF as like a professional brewer for the past, I guess, like 5 or 6 years. Not obviously not counting COVID when it wasn't happening, but
yeah,
I can definitely say when I first started going, it was a huge, like weird novelty. The fact that I was a female brewer. And now I think it's more of like, I don't get like the surprise anymore. It's more, I guess, accepted, which is such a weird thing to say, or more common, I guess, or people are aware of it and, wanting that kind of diversity in the industry, which I think I kind of see from a lot of people. I think that, most, people in the brewing industry are making a true effort to be more diverse and, hire diverse people. And the conversations are definitely, I think, more mature. I feel like a lot of people ask me questions of like, well, what should I do in this situation? And I'm like, I mean, I'm still just a brewer. I can talk as much as I can about diversity and like things that you can do, but obviously I'm not, a professional in that field, but yeah, it's the conversations are definitely way more refreshing than they used to be.
Is there a good example of one of those conversations that has been rattling around in your mind since everybody came to Denver?
I guess I couldn't say anything specifically, but I guess
Sure.
I have had a lot of people of like, just random in conversation of like, what do you think we can do to like bring more, women in the industry, or, people of diversity, or of, different color and all that stuff. And I've had a lot of people ask me that, just like, yeah, what are your thoughts on it? And, I think we at Jagged Mountain have really made a true effort to, hire diversity in our tap room in the past like year and a half. And, I think it's just representation. I kind of tell people, like, just interview everybody you can, put the job posting in different places, not just, the craft beer board that, every guy is on, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
really make an effort to, hire people outside of that kind of specific area. So I think that's mostly the question I get, is people are trying to make an effort and they want to know how, which is really amazing. But most of the time I usually just refer them to like the BA website, with all the diversity panel stuff on there, which I think is really fantastic.
Yeah. It strikes me, because some of the conversations that I've been having with folks have been, we can't find folks that want, that come from, diverse backgrounds, I guess, that are not middle-aged white guys, where we are. And part of it, I think some people have said, is like, well, like Denver or Portland, or some of the more robust beer scenes, like it's more ingrained into, the overall life of a place, as opposed to, some other places. So like it in some cases it's a little bit easier, but then it really just kind of comes down to, well, then change the beer culture in your area. And
Exactly. Yeah.
you can't just wait for that to happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think like hosting like specific events is a huge draw for people. Like we have like a Pride event every year where we release a Pride beer. And obviously that like brings in like a different crowd. And I think just, yeah, really reaching out to like specific communities can really, start changing that whole message of craft beer, that it's not just for, older white guys to come sit at the bar and talk. It's literally for everyone.
How's the last 2 years changed you as a brewer, if at all?
I think I'm a little more stressed. And by a little, I mean a lot. I feel like I'm a lot more stressed. I feel like before COVID hit, I had finally reached this like pinnacle in my career that I had been working so hard towards. I had just got the job at Jagged Mountain as the head brewer. I think I had almost finished my first year there, and I was feeling really good. I was, improving as much as I could. Our tap room was like super busy every single day. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and I got furloughed, and I felt like almost like the world came crashing down around me, because I had been working so hard to get to this point. And then I didn't have a job, and then there was no, I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know what COVID was going to do. I didn't know if the service industry was dead, kind of thing. So I think it's made me a little bit more like resourceful in terms of not placing all of my like happiness on my job, which I have always been a really, kind of a workaholic, and really valued the work that I do. And so finding happiness outside of that has been really important for me. And then I think for me, just not taking beer as seriously as I used to, getting back to the point where I'm just like, enjoying the process instead of like working so hard to do this all the time kind of thing.
It's an interesting, I've heard other folks say that of, not having a brewery to go into every day, or not mashing in, or, not being excited about the next release, sort of freed up brain space to be like, oh yeah, I used to enjoy hiking. I used to enjoy like all of the, things outside of work. And I was a person outside of, my job identity. And a lot of people use this time to discover themselves again.
Yeah.
Has that helped you in your return to the brew house?
Absolutely. I think it helps me be just generally like a happier person and not so high strung when it comes to the beer that we're serving. Like, of course, I still want, everything that we put out to be quality and delicious. And, I want our staff to like really represent that too. But I'm not so like hardcore about it anymore, I think, which is nice for me as as a person, and I'm sure nice for everyone else around me.
In what way?
I never would say that I was like a mean person, but yeah, I think I was like way more stressed pre-COVID of like just always panicking, like if something went wrong, or like, a Pilsner went out and it was a little cloudy, or, I would just kind of I would like freak out a little bit. And now I'm just like, you know what? I just let things go a little bit easier, which is, I think, a better way to be, instead of super just on top of everything all the time. Because, at the end of the day, it's beer, and it's not, I take pride in my work, obviously, but at the same time, I'm not going to make, I don't know, it's like a fine balance, right? I think it's not being too stressed about it, but then also preserving that quality and, what you want to put out into the world.
Let's back up a little bit. What was your career trajectory that brought you to Jagged Mountain?
So I started as a home brewer. I ended up doing a pro-am beer with Black Project here in Denver. And that was kind of my first experience at JABF. And at the time, I was looking to change careers. I was in school at the time, like thinking about becoming a nurse and then going into microbiology. And I didn't really, find a whole lot of passion in either one of those. But I knew I wanted to do something with science. So, I was homebrewing a lot, went to JABF, really saw the like camaraderie and how everybody supported each other. And then, yeah, pretty much after that, decided that I wanted to pursue, a professional career in brewing. So I enrolled in the brewing program at Regis University. And then that was, I think, about a year long. And then started at Lone Tree Brewing Company down in Lone Tree, Colorado. And I worked there for about 3 years. And as like a shift brewer. And I literally learned everything I did from there. I mean, Regis was great. And it kind of taught me a lot of like, math stuff and all the background stuff, but like learning my skills really all came from Lone Tree. And we won a few JBF awards while I was there. So that was a great experience. And then, on year 3, I have always been a pretty creative person, and them being like a larger brewery, I wasn't able to really do my own batches kind of thing very often. So I really wanted to start looking for, hopefully a head brewer position in a smaller craft brewery. And I got lucky. The first place I applied was Jagged Mountain, and I went through a few interviews and eventually got the job.
I like that you wanted a career in science, came to brewing, but then are also talking about the creative aspects of it, because I think the two are so important. And, there's a lot of folks that excel in either one way or the other. But being open-minded on both sides of that I think helps make better beer in general.
For sure.
Where's your creativity leading you these days?
That's a great question. I feel like these days I kind of just like to brew beer that's just highly drinkable. At Jagged, we're kind of like a catch-all. We don't really have like one specific style that we, try to make all the time. We kind of make a little bit of everything, which I really like. We have a couple of flagship beers, but honestly, like most of our taps are usually either one-offs or beers that we make like once a year. I think I like to follow the trends of what people like to drink in our tap room, I think. So I think a lot of people come in for our like fruited kettle sours. So I've really tried to make those like highly drinkable, really delicious, because we have a lot of people that come in for that. But personally, I really enjoy making lager. And it's funny to say that because I don't think they're like maybe super creative. I'm not like putting like insane ingredients or doing like this crazy process. But I think I really appreciate it as a beer to not only drink, but to make. So for me, that's the beers that I look forward to brewing.
What's an example that's currently in the tanks that speaks to that?
Well, I don't know if I have one currently in the tank, but
okay.
we just had, since GABF, I, made so many beers, and now I'm kind of, pumping the brakes a little bit, but,
not as many people coming through on expense accounts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we have our anniversary coming up this weekend, actually. And I have, like a hazy IPA in the tank and, a saison, but yeah, those are like kind of beers that I've made before. So not super pushing that creativity side, I guess, but, go ahead.
No. Can I ask you about a hazy IPA as an anniversary beer? Because I had the guys from the Big Friendly on, they're down in Oklahoma. They were on the show last week and they were getting ready for their anniversary and they were making a hazy for it. And I've been to other breweries in the last couple of years where they've made a hazy for it and for their anniversary. And it used to be, and now I'm carbon dating myself here, but that it would be some sort of barrel aged beer or, something that spent some time in the tanks or, something that was an offbeat style or so. And hazies to me are, the milk of, the beer world. Like they're always in the fridge. And it's, it's just kind of something that we've gotten used to. And this is me being super snarky now, but like, is it really worth it as an anniversary beer? Like,
I will say it's a double hazy IPA. So
of course then. Yeah. Never mind. Question withdrawn.
But no, I do remember the days where it was like, if you had an anniversary, you're releasing like a 12% barrel aged stout that had like a bunch of stuff thrown in it. And honestly, I kind of miss that a little bit.
But an anniversary beer, because, we as humans celebrate not arbitrary dates, but specific dates. And we mark milestones with anniversaries and all of that. And we want it to feel special. How do you approach making a double hazy that is not, something that would be released in the middle of June or, December or whatever? How do you make that special for an anniversary, or do you?
Yeah, I think with our hazies, I've been trying to experiment with a few different yeasts. We always get a bunch of crazy hops, like one-off hops, and like, a box here and there of different stuff that's like the hypey, whatever hop of the day. I'm not a huge fan of hazies. I don't drink them a lot, but I have to make them a lot. So,
yeah.
I think they're actually, for me, like a pretty complicated beer to make good. I'm always looking for something with hazies that's like in between drinkable, but still has that incredible hop character, and like always asking everybody that does like, the big breweries that do that are super popular for hazy beers, like what their method is. And honestly, like everybody has a different way of doing it, which is pretty interesting. But for me, I've been experimenting with a lot of different yeasts. So this time we used a Kvik strain that we've used once before, which I never know if that's how you pronounce it or not, but that's just what I go with now.
Okay. I've given up. Unless you are of Norwegian descent, you're never going to pronounce it properly. None of us are. So I've just given up, and Kvik, Everybody knows what you're talking.
Exactly. I say Kvik and people get it. But so we've been experimenting with that a little bit, and it's been really awesome because it's a, super fast fermentation, obviously. And the strain that we get is from Inland Island, which is a local yeast company. And it's called, I think, like Tropic Express or something like that. And so it obviously like really pushes those like fruity esters. And, in combination with the dry hop, you just get a huge fruit bomb, which is what the people want. So that's what I've been trying to do.
Give the people what they want.
Exactly.
I know. I dig that. And I'm going to contradict myself here because I was sort of doing that anniversary thing on the fly as you were saying it. But like, I guess a lot of time anniversary beers have been what's been popular in larger beer. Like when I think about those 12% stouts, those were kind of rarities, but still really well sought after. And I guess they still are, but they kind of had the zeitgeist at the time that hazy IPA currently enjoys.
Yeah.
So it's really just anniversary beers as a marker in time, actually, I guess, for breweries.
That's an interesting way to put it, but
I'm still kind of fleshing this out in my brain as I'm saying it, which is the problem of doing a podcast like this, that I didn't come in with notes of let me shit all over everybody's anniversary beers and then immediately go, no, you guys are just kind of keeping up with the times. It's not like fifth anniversary is although we should probably start something where it's like wedding anniversaries where, year one is paper and year two is, I forget at that point. There should be a universal brewery anniversary, list.
Honestly, I would love that. I'd be like, all right, it's year 9, but now we make a
Gruit. Year 9 is Gruits.
I'd be totally cool with that.
Okay, we'll have to get on that. We'll convene the beer council to start Blue Ribbon panel to start putting together a pretty serious list. I like that you were talking about that hazies are hard to make. Because I think there are some folks who are like, yeah, it's idiot proof, and those beers kind of don't stand up to the ones where the brewers have put in a lot of thought on ingredients and process and the long-term growth of the overall category. And with that in mind, I wanted to jump back because I asked you where your creativity was leading you these days. Where is your scientific side leading you these days? You're a scientist by trade. You're interested in that. So like where is that part of your brewer brain urging you to go?
I mean, definitely with the hazy IPAs. I think that, it's like a love-hate thing, right? Like I love like reading about stuff like that and, knowing what biotransformation is and having all these elements come into this one beer and having the timing just right and these ingredients and the mash just right to make this perfectly hazy, fruity beer. So I think that is kind of where I find interest in the science side. I think it's more frustrating for me because I feel like I also have struggled to make a consistent one. And I think mostly that's just because I changed the hops up so much. Like we don't really have a hazy that I'm like baking every single month. That's exactly the same. So I think that's the frustrating part is I haven't been able to get like quite the consistency that I want. But the experimentation behind it has been a lot of fun. And, just knowing all the science and talking to other brewers who, make a lot of hazy IPAs. Like I'm good friends with one of the brewers at our mutual friend, and obviously they make hazy IPA all the time.
Yes.
And so it's like, bouncing ideas off of him and being able to talk through all these things is really interesting. And also, I would say probably pushes my creative side too. I don't know if I enjoy it as much as I do like making lager though, because I'm not as good at it.
Is that something you want to pursue though?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I want to be good at everything. So,
is there, lager aside, is there a style that has vexed you, that has, like over the years you've taken stabs at it, but that you just haven't gotten it to where you wanted, that you keep coming back to?
Yeah, honestly, I'm really not that great at making, like we were just talking about, really high ABV imperial stouts that have like a bunch of adjuncts and stuff in it. Just because I think it's mostly because I know that I'm good at making lower ABV, really drinkable beer. But when it comes to, these like really high ABV, like you're throwing lactose and you're throwing marshmallows and like all this stuff in it, that's when I get kind of lost. And then I just never quite like hit the mark. Like it's always good, but it's not like the good ones, So I think that's kind of, where I lose my groove a little bit. But luckily, I guess, like we were just saying, it's not really a super trendy thing anymore. But I would like to push that a little bit more in the future for myself, probably this winter, obviously. But we'll see.
More in a moment, but first, a message from this episode's sponsors, New Holland Brewing. Did you know that the term dragon's milk has been around since the 17th century? It was used to describe potent ales and elixirs that were worthy of celebration, a reward at the end of a hero's journey. New Holland Brewing Company is proud to continue that tradition today with Dragon's Milk Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout, clocking in at a robust 11% ABV and featuring notes of roasted malt, chocolate, and vanilla. The legends of Dragon's Milk continues to grow, and we'll raise a glass to that. You can learn more and find Dragon's Milk near you at dragonsmilk.com. And we're also brought to you by Les Baumes, a celebration of saison, mixed fermentation beer, ciders, natural wines, and oysters. Brewers from around the country will descend on Duluth, Georgia on November 5th, 2022 from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on the town green. All proceeds go to further the mission of Oyster South, supporting aquaculture in the Southeast. Tickets are $85 and include unlimited beer samples, coffee, oysters, and a barbecue plate. Get yours today before it sells out by going to lesbon.eventbrite.com. So I reached out to you, I guess, last week because there is, what I love about social media sometimes is these fun little posts that go up that get people to think, get screenshot, they get shared around. It causes a stir for a conversation for a little bit and then largely gets forgotten. And then somebody finds it again and they reshare it and the conversation restarts. And Terry Ferendorf of the Pink Boot Society found a post of yours from October of 19, which again, we've been time traveling back to, these 2 years ago where the world was such a different place. And you had this great post where you were urging people to not open a brewery.
Yeah.
And in 2019, there were rumblings on the horizon, not of COVID, but of, impending worry among the brewing industry where people were thinking about closing. And people were seeing how tough the competition was, how Seltzer was eating into things. And just that, the idea of, 2017 of, hey, everybody go open a brewery was kind of fading a little bit. And you put it in really great terms, and you can have a business plan, you can have a name, you can have a location. But that isn't always the smartest thing to do. and then if you do, obviously, have experience and, understand the business and making sure that you're hiring people that are qualified for it and having these realistic goals. One, what prompted you to do that post back in 19, if you can remember? And two, how are you feeling about that sentiment today?
Yeah, that post really aged well too.
It really did.
It really did. I was like, oh wow, did I predict the future? No.
Do it again.
Yeah, it's kind of depressing what brought it on. Me and my ex, we moved to Denver together. We started to get into craft beer. I went to school. I started becoming a brewer. And that whole time we had kind of had this dream of obviously opening a brewery. And that started when I started home brewing. And we had, a name for a place. We had, ideas of where the location was going to be. We had all these dreams, right? And then once I started working as a professional brewer, that dream kind of faded for me, just because I realized how difficult that was. I realized how much I didn't know. And I realized how much I was totally underqualified to own a business at all. And even us together, I did not think that we would be able to do it. I think we would be able to do it. I think it was more of like, would we be able to do it well? The longer I worked in the craft beer industry, the more I was like, no, I definitely don't want to do that. That sounds incredibly stressful. You literally have to dedicate your whole life, your money, your time, everything to this business. And, I'm a person that I like to travel and I like to do things outside of work. So for me, that started fading a lot. And I think for him, he really pushed for that. Obviously we're not together anymore. So that was kind of, a little rift in our relationship, but that's kind of what brought on that post is that, I had been thinking about it a lot. I've been talking to him about it a lot and, realizing that, yeah, this is not realistic. And, coming from the position of a home brewer, I know a lot of people dream of that one day. Like, that's why they do it, right? That's why they make these beers at home, because they have a boring day job, and they dream of doing something that they love. And not to say that people who have started as a home brewer and started a brewery aren't, doing great these days. But the trend is that, if you're a home brewer and you open a brewery, sometimes it's, not that great. Whether it's from the beer or how you run the business or, the people you hire or training, any of those things that you said. So that's what brought that along. And then I forgot what the second question was.
Well, what brought it on and where does it stand for you today?
Oh, today, I think it's definitely, pretty much the same. I think for me personally, I feel like I think about it a little bit more just because I'm getting older. And I think that I would have to partner with people that would know how to run a business, because I maybe know more than I did, back then, but I definitely don't know enough. But I think, it still stands the same, and it's especially, I think, even harder nowadays, just because the competition is so fierce and not as many people are drinking beer. Not as many people are coming out. So, if you start a brewery and you don't know what you're doing, people are going to immediately see that and go down the road to a brewery that's been open, for 6 or 7 years, and they've got it figured out.
Yeah.
So I think, competition and that it's kind of cutthroat, and it's, I hate to kill people's dreams, but
no,
I mean, sometimes you probably should.
No. And I agree with you, on that. I mean, it's one of those things, following the recession of 2008, we saw a huge glut of breweries opening, and some have been great and others have just kind of been middling along. And, as you get into, whatever we're headed into economically, if history repeats itself in a couple of years, we'll start to see, hopefully everything rebound and places open up again, or open up for the first time. And I think that, the lessons of the last decade are going to be important for that next generation of brewers to really pay attention to. And everything that you just cited is so important. So I hope people hear that and listen to it.
Yeah.
So this post on that Terry shared is just one of many thousands of posts that you have done on social media, of which you are very good at social media. As somebody who is not good at social media, one, what goes into creating a good post? Two, is there like a social media persona versus, yourself? Like I know some, brands try to, be edgy, or some brands try to be serious when they're really not. There's some people who just like to, project, a false sense of things. I get the sense that what you post is very much just you.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely made a true effort to do that. I think it's funny when people say that I'm good at social media, because I really don't feel like I am.
I also don't know if I know what that means, to be honest with you. Like, I enjoy seeing your posts. Like, I think they're fun, they're engaging. And again, like that Terry post, like it gets me thinking of like, oh, like there's real conversations that are happening out there in the world. That's not just, hey, look at me, I'm checking into Untapped drinking another beer, or, hey, it's me and I'm, off to, the Great American Beer Festival or something. And there's no real context. You write with context, or post with context.
Absolutely. And, I think mostly for me, a lot of these posts are based around either conversations that I've had with other people, or just like random thoughts that I've thought about, like the industry, or like with brewing or anything like that. And things that I just find interesting to think about. And obviously other people like to think about it too. So a conversation starter, I think is always a good point. Instagram has changed over the years since I've been quote unquote like an influencer. And so I think that has been pretty difficult for me, because in the past, I always just did the picture with a thoughtful blurb on the bottom, and that would be super successful. But now, it's more of a video content thing. And I have really struggled with that, of trying to do something interesting that is also that Instagram algorithm is going to enjoy too. And it feels less authentic to me when I try to do videos, I guess. Because I'm not getting that like message out there as much. And so, I think that it's been interesting. Social media is one of those things that occupies way too much of my brain, just because, like I said, I try to be good at everything, and social media constantly makes me feel like I'm not good.
I mean, that I know that's sort of the nature of it, but that's so disheartening to hear.
Yeah. I mean, it's a up and down kind of thing. Sometimes I, post on there and I feel really good about the content that I'm sharing. And then other times I'm like, oh, I just got to do, one post this week. And I just, record a couple of things and slap it on there. And then, don't pay attention to it for a couple of weeks and come back to it again and, reignite that, I guess, interest. But ultimately I do it, I think at the end of the day, because I get, a lot of people especially women who are inspired to become brewers, which is, ultimately why I did it anyway.
And that sort of goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the show, of just trying to, reach out to people in different ways. And it obviously seems to be working, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've definitely had a few people, message me of literally saying like, I hope you know that I got into the beer industry because of you. Like, I went to brewing school because of you, kind of thing. And that is so incredibly rewarding, because I think representation is extremely important. And I kind of saw that, that missing piece in the beer industry when I first started 7 years ago, is that, yeah, that this really wasn't like a very common thing to have a female brewer. And, realizing that this could be like a successful Instagram page if I kind of shared my journey and kind of represented that very small part of the beer industry and tried to fight for more of that diversity.
There's this old adage of, don't ask the question that you don't want the answer to, kind of thing. And I know we've been talking largely about positivity. Are there shitheads that are sliding into DMs?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think I have curated an atmosphere on my Instagram page where I don't really get that as much as other like beer influencers that I've talked to. I think mostly, a lot of guys just on my page just want to have that like conversation, or they want somebody to talk to. And I'm like really intolerant to, inappropriate messages. I'll either call people out or I'll just immediately block them. So I think I don't get that as much as I used to, especially.
That's good.
Mostly, yeah, it's really nice. I know I get that question a lot, actually. Like, oh, I bet you get like so many like weird DMs. I mean, every once in a while, I have the guy who's like, I don't know, like, oh, I didn't know women could brew, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And those just like little shitty comments where it's like not overtly like sexist or in your face, but it's like just enough to piss you off.
Yeah.
Are the ones that kind of get me most of the time, because then I'm like, these people actually like think this way. It's not like you're not trying to obviously like make me mad. I think it's just like, yeah, that's just how they think. And so that's always like kind of shocking to me, but I try to calm down and I come back to the message and I answer it in like, an appropriate way, because at the end of the day, I'm here to like, I guess, educate people and kind of move forward with things, not fight with people. So that's the stance that I've taken.
Yeah. No, I asked, so I used to do hard news and like, like newspapers and broadcasts and things like that. And, I had friends who were on air reporters and stuff. And, they'd always, if we'd be hanging out, like they'd open up their DMs just to sort of show just how creepy a lot of the television viewers were and things. Yeah. And it was always like, oh, it's just, and it's, the other middle-aged white guys that we're all sitting around, we're like, we don't get messages like that. Like this is,
oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's apparently our contemporaries that are sending these types of messages, like, which is also gross in its own way. But, yeah. You had a post recently, that I enjoyed because you were talking about seltzer. And I think you said something along the lines of like, love it or hate it. It's here to stay. And I get that these days. Like, I was one of those people early on where I was like, this is ridiculous. Why do we have this kind of thing? And now I'm drinking them and tasting them. And I don't always prefer them. But I can understand why people like them. And I can also appreciate that breweries are making them to bring customers in the door, to continue to keep the lights on and to pay people and to, that things evolve. What do you enjoy about making seltzers as a brewer?
I enjoy that it's so easy.
A lot of yeast nutrients.
So easy.
Keep the yeast happy. And
exactly. As long as you have these very specific things that are pretty crucial to making a seltzer, it's literally like a 2-hour brew day, if that. So yeah, it's super easy. It's super easy and it's cheap, obviously, and it's a moneymaker. And I personally have come kind of like you, like have come to actually like seltzer more than I used to. It's like kind of my go-to like concert drink now, just because if it gets warm, it still tastes good. There's a lot of benefits with seltzer. I think I am a little scared of like the future generation, obviously only drinking seltzer and beer kind of falling by the wayside is kind of terrifying to me.
Yeah.
But, I've always been a person who accepts trends. I feel like people also said this about hazy IPA in the beginning of like, oh, it's just a fad. Like, it's going to go away. And here we are like 7-8 years later and it's still around. So
what you're saying is that seltzer is going to be your anniversary beer next year.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of ridiculous. I, like a year ago when I first started making seltzer, I may have accidentally made a 10% ABV seltzer.
Accidentally. I mean, that's the standard. That's the standard recipe for most people. And then they're cutting it down by half, but yeah.
Yeah, I was aiming to go for like a solid 5%, and apparently glucose and sucrose are very different. And
all right, you missed that day of science class. Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, I think it's like
they weren't teaching that at advanced seltzer dynamics at Regis.
I was like, whatever, it's just a seltzer. All you have to do is put sugar and water and some yeast nutrient and you're good to go. Like, I just don't think I cared about it as much.
Yeah.
And then I was knocking out and I was like, it took the gravity and I was like, oh my God. I think I just made a 10% seltzer. And I even went to the bar to our regulars and I was like, if I made a 10% seltzer, would you guys drink it? And it's actually been really popular.
So you still continue to make this to this day, your 10%.
Yeah.
Nice.
So the video that I shared on Instagram, it was us making a 10% seltzer because people love it so much. And it's nice because we have carbonated water on tap now, so we can cut it, so it's like, if you don't want to do the 10%, we have a way to like kind of dilute it a little bit, which is really nice. But it's been interesting. So I think there is ways to, make seltzer a little bit more fun. I think I don't know if you've tried Smooge from Holmes Brewery up in Michigan.
I've seen it on social media. I've yet to have the experience.
Yeah. So I took a trip up to Michigan this past year and had it for the first time. And I was like, how did they make this? So I think that
it's a smoothie, right?
Yeah. So I think they just put a shit ton of fruit in it. I think I'm sure they pasteurize it. I don't see why they wouldn't, or how they could get away with not doing that, but
hope so. Yeah. Temperature goes above 71 and all of a sudden it's, yeah.
Yeah. You have a bomb in your hand, but
yeah.
That kind of like stoked my interest for seltzers, I think. And I think that's like a huge moneymaker for them too, So I think there are ways that you can be creative with that sort of thing. I've seen like a couple of like hard teas out there, which I also find really interesting.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by those these days as well.
Yeah, so I think it's, brewers always have this like kind of thing when like new stuff comes out that everybody's like, I hate it. And I don't want to do it. And it's just a fad and it's going to go away. And then, obviously it doesn't go away. And then we get over ourselves and then we have to figure out ways to like make this fun and interesting and creative and kind of in line with what we're doing with beer,
The thing that I've been thinking about with seltzer recently, though, is some of the parallels to early craft of, you had three big players and then all these other little upstarts came around and sort of changed the nature of everything. And these days there are three very large national brands that control at least the dollars. And a lot of the, the popularity of the segment. But to be a small seltzer maker, I imagine has to have some freedoms where, you can make things that taste, the way that you want them to, or that haven't been focus group to death, or that can convey a sense of place, or just sort of have that specialness to it of just being available in the tap room. Have you experienced any of that in making these, that your seltzer isn't going to take on White Claw, but it can have an impact locally?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have always been a person that really likes to work with fruit. I like to eat fruit. I just like fruited beers. That's just who I am. And I think seltzer is incredible at showcasing interesting fruit. So the one that I just brewed, we're going to do like a cranberry orange kind of flavor. So
little Thanksgiving, taste of Thanksgiving.
Exactly. Yeah. Fall and winter. I feel like that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And so, I think with the big brands, you like get the strawberry flavor, and you have the lime, and you have these like kind of all encompassing, like all these big seltzer brands have these very specific flavors. But I think with small craft breweries or seltzeries, you can really push that creativity of using these type of, fruits or flavorings or, additions, because it's literally water, for the base. So you're really showcasing like that fruit or that flavor, which I really enjoy.
I've been asking folks on the show for a while now the green door question, which is, there's a television show called The Good Place. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not.
I don't think so.
Okay. So in the final season of The Good Place, they introduce a concept of the green door. And you can walk through this door and be anywhere at any point in time with, doing whatever you want to be doing. So if there was a green door on our plane of existence and this conversation was over and you could walk through it and go to any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of my favorite experiences in the past has been when I went to Japan. I guess this was 2018, maybe 2019. I can't remember. But yeah, the craft beer industry is rough over there. Like it's few and far between, just because their taxes are insane. But I did end up making it to this brewery called Kyoto Brewing Company. And it was super interesting because the owners, it was like an Australian guy, a British guy, an American, and I think a Japanese guy, all came to, they were all friends, like somehow met in college or something. And then all moved to Japan and decided to open this brewery. So I had like gotten off the train, walked probably like 3 miles to get to this place because the taxis are kind of expensive there. And yeah, just like kind of came into this like little Japanese like brewery haven kind of thing. And they were using really interesting like local ingredients, or like ingredients that are familiar with Japan, like matcha, and they were doing like mochi stuff and like some really cool stuff. And I enjoy those flavors. And so that was probably like one of my favorite like brewery experiences, was just sitting out on their little patio. I think I was drinking like a matcha IPA. I was with my ex at the time, and, we're still really good friends. So I could probably go back to that and, share a beer and talk to the brewers. We did a little tour of the brew house, which was really cool. It was exceptionally clean, like probably the cleanest brewery I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Yeah. I was like shocked how clean it was. And I feel like, the Japanese culture is kind of like that. Like just everything. This is super immaculate. Yeah. But it was like, I walked in the brewery and I was like, oh my God, how much time do you guys spend cleaning? Because this place is spotless. Like everything had its little place. And I don't know, it was just an experience. It was really interesting, to be halfway across the world and in a totally different country with totally different flavors. And, coming back to craft beer, I've always said has been kind of like a universal language, like I can share a craft beer with anybody. And especially when they feature ingredients that are familiar with the place, I really enjoy. So that would probably be, my green door moment.
Nice. Thanks for being on the show this week. I appreciate the insight and just the conversation in general. Thanks for making the time.
This has been a great conversation, and I've also had a really great time.
Alyssa, by the way, is on Instagram at Southern Beer Girl, and I highly suggest giving her account a follow. Who in the beer space is doing cool social media things? Let me know by emailing John Hall, it's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com, or tell me about it on Twitter. Yeah, social media at John_Hall. All About Beer is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just follow along at All About Beer. And of course, with the social media theme, This Week in Rauch Beer is also online. The Facebook group is easy to search, and on Twitter and Instagram, it's at TW Rauch Beer. We are able to bring you this show each week thanks to the companies that support independent journalism in the beer space. If you'd like to learn more about our surprisingly affordable rates, please reach out to info@allaboutbeer.com. Speaking of that, this episode is brought to you by New Holland Brewing. Did you know that the term dragon's milk has been around since the 17th century? It was used to describe potent ales and elixirs that were worthy of celebration, a reward at the end of a hero's journey. New Holland Brewing Company is proud to continue that tradition today with Dragon's Milk Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout, clocking in at a robust 11% ABV and featuring notes of roasted malt, chocolate, and vanilla. The legend of Dragon's Milk continues to grow, and we'll raise a glass to that. Learn more and find Dragon's Milk near you at dragonsmilk.com. This episode is also brought to you by Les Bonnes, a celebration of saison, mixed fermentation beer, ciders, natural wine, and oysters. Brewers from around the country will descend on Duluth, Georgia on November 5th, 2022 from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on the town green. All proceeds go to further the mission of Oyster South, supporting aquaculture in the Southeast. Tickets are just $85 and include unlimited beer samples, coffee, oysters, and a barbecue plate. Get yours today before it sells out at lesbon.eventbrite.com. And finally, All About Beer has a podcast channel now. Search and subscribe All About Beer on your podcast platform of choice. There you can listen to Beer Travelers, the Brewer to Brewer podcast, and the All About Beer podcast. As always, Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And don't forget to go visit allaboutbeer.com. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.